It has been 1.5 years since the closure of schools and the suspension of face-to-face learning in the Philippines, brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. But despite the many challenges, the Department of Education was able to rise above them and continue the delivery of basic education services to the Filipino learners throughout the country. Secretary Leonor Magtolis Briones always says, education must continue even in times of crisis, whether it may be a calamity, disaster, emergency, quarantine, or even war. The department has always worked hard to ensure that every child should have access to quality education, even in the face of disaster or a pandemic. This is the driving force behind our efforts to form DepEd's blended learning framework. Today, the Information Communications Technology Service and its Educational Technology Unit, or ICTS EdTech, is in collaboration with the British Embassy Manila to provide a knowledge-sharing session for public and private school teachers on the integration and introduction of latest ICT tools, aiming to supplement and augment instruction via different application of UK EdTech solution for K-12 levels. This is only one of the initiatives of the Office of the Undersecretary for Administration through the ICTS EdTech and our partner organization, which without question stepped up and pioneered digital learning for both students and teachers at a time when innovation was needed to ensure the continuity of educational services. Education in the Philippines has evolved and continues to evolve as the country and the world cope with the effects of COVID-19 pandemic. It is through the fearless and proactive response embodied in the
Good afternoon to our friends at the Department of Education, including Undersecretary Alan Pascua and Director Abraham Abanil, and good morning to colleagues in the UK. I'm Alistair Totti, Deputy Head of Mission at the British Embassy in Manila. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to this knowledge-sharing session on digital education for K-12 to share insights on education in the new normal and the application of UK EdTech solutions for levels K-12. Our thanks to the Department of Education and the DepEd Information Communications Technology Service EdTech Unit for organising this event and your great collaboration with the British Embassy Manila and the UK Department for International Trade. We are also delighted to be joined by the DepEd regional offices, public and private schools across the country and various education associations. At the onset of the pandemic, we were all faced with the challenge of schools being compelled to switch to virtual delivery of lessons, hence the need for effective online lessons, content and platforms for successful digital learning. While face-to-face classes gradually restart, the integration of information technology in education is set to continue, with online learning an integral component. Our EdTech specialist, Vipul Bhargava, will speak about education in the new normal, sharing the UK's experience, acknowledging that successful virtual learning entails providing a range of approaches, assessment options and digital resources. We'll also hear about innovations in British educational technology that address these opportunities, as well as case studies on how these EdTech solutions by select UK companies have been effectively used in the region, including in the Philippines. And we are very grateful to our UK speakers for sharing their insights. In the UK, we aspire to provide world-class education for every child, whatever their background. As you will hear, there has been huge progress delivering this, which underlines the many strengths of our education system. High-quality education unlocks potential and benefits all of society. Similarly, effective learning will impact future income, productivity and competitiveness. This will also contribute to long-term sustainable growth. We hope this event is an effective forum for both Philippines and UK organisations to share information and ideas on partnership opportunities and will boost capacity building in education and human resource development here in the Philippines. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Magandang araw po sa inyong lahat.
Good day, everyone. To discuss the Philippine priorities in digital education for K-12, please welcome the Director of the ICTS under Department of Education, Director Abram Y.C. Abanil.
Honorable Undersecretary Alain Delby Pasqua, Honorable Alastair Toti, Deputy Head Mission for the British Embassy in Manila, guests, ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant afternoon. As head of the ICT service of the Department of Education, my office has been working heavily on the adoption of digital education in our country, which has been drastically accelerated by the COVID-19 pandemic. In the context of the Philippines, we define digital education into three main categories. The first of this is the delivery of the digital literacy skills which are required in the Philippine education curriculum as early as grade 4 up to the time that our learners would graduate in grade 12. Historically, it is for this purpose that the bulk of the DepEd computerization program has been focused on to ensure that the devices and computer laboratories are available for teachers to deliver classes intended to teach digital literacy skills to our learners. The second component of digital education for the Philippines is what we call ICT-assisted teaching, where technology is used as a tool for teaching. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the department has actually diverted most of our computerization programs in ensuring that all our teachers will have laptops for use in blended learning. We have also released what we call the DepEd Commons, which is a platform for open educational resources that our teachers can use, our very own DepEd learning management system, as well as DepEd TV and radio, which provides digital content that teachers can use in the delivery of lessons. The third component is what we call ICT-assisted learning, and our local government units have been helping us with this initiative by providing gadgets for our learners. Our dream is that each learner would have their own gadget so that they can access our learning platforms, which already have rich learning resources and will eventually have the facility to inform our learners what competencies they are weak in, and more importantly, what resources they need to review in order to better understand the said competency, whether this be video lectures, articles, or even interactive games. We know there is a huge potential in digital education, and we look forward to working with the British government in introducing new tools, new edtech solutions that we can adopt and eventually scale up. Good afternoon, and thank you again to the British government for arranging this knowledge sharing session.
Magandang hapon. Good afternoon po sa lahat ng mga viewers po natin. Welcome to this UK-Philippine knowledge sharing session on digital education for K-12. I understand we have our viewers on Facebook and YouTube. So magandang hapon po ulit and good afternoon. My name is Karen Ann Hipol. I am the Senior Trade Manager of the Department for International Trade based at the British Embassy, Manila. And again, we would like to give our very special thanks to the Department of Education and to the Department of Education Information and Communications Technology Service, EdTech Unit. Medyo mahaba po, no? But again, maraming salamat po for your partnership and for your collaboration for us in order to have this event. We actually have a number of UK speakers with us this afternoon who will share their experiences on delivering solutions in digital or edtech platforms. We actually have one main speaker who I think is not yet online. So we will go ahead and present to you four very distinct companies and expert companies, again, from the UK, who will share with us their services in EdTech. I will now proceed to share, I guess, or introduce the first company. It's called Q Files, and we will have two speakers for this company. The first speaker is Mr. Nicholas Harris. He has a degree in geography from Sheffield University, and he has been in book publishing all his career, working for several companies that specialize in information or reference books. He founded Q-File's sister company, Orifice Books Limited, in 1992, where he headed editorial and sales department. At Q-Files, he shares the responsibility for strategic planning and marketing, while his core role is to manage the site's content and editorial. Our second speaker as well, also for Q-Files, is Miss Sarah Hartley. She gained a degree in industrial economics from Nottingham University, and she joined Q-Files' sister company, Orifice Books, in 2003. She became a director in 2006, heading up both production and financial departments. At Q-Files, she shares the responsibility for strategic planning and marketing, while her core role is to manage technical and web design operations. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Nicholas and Sarah.
Hello, I'm Sarah Hartley. My colleague Nicholas Harris and I are here to present our digital education resource, Q-Files. We're book publishers, and we've brought our long experience of producing content for educational books to creating and managing this great information website for students. Could we have the first slide, please?
Q-Files is a huge online knowledge resource for children aged between 7 and 13. It consists of more than 2,000 detailed, highly illustrated pages covering a comprehensive range of topics on science, history, geography, the arts, and much more. Typhoons, ancient Egypt, X-ray energy, human body, these are just a few examples of subjects described and explained clearly to young readers. Q-Files is what Wikipedia would be if it were designed especially for children and produced by experienced book publishers, full of useful information, intelligible, easily navigable, appealing, 100% accurate. We at Q-Files are those experienced children's book publishers. Based in Oxford, England, we draw on a very particular blend of British expertise, our background in books, our work with academic consultants from British universities, and our language of English, the principal language of the internet. Next slide, please.
So you've acquired Q-Files. What are you going to use it for? And who benefits most from it? Well, as we'll see over the next few slides, one of the best things about Q-Files is that it's highly versatile. It can be used in several different ways, and everybody in the school benefits. Your school gains a vast modern digital reference library, constantly updated and improved, accessible 24/7 by everyone, both in the school and at home. Teachers will have a rich resource for creating lesson plans, with the use of tens of thousands of images, diagrams, and videos. In the classroom, Q-Files can be used for a whole range of exercises, for example, digital skills, literacy, and via our QWiz app linked to the site, a set of quizzes to round off the lesson in a fun way. For students, Q-Files is great for background reading in preparation for class or homework, and a mine of amazing information and facts. And they'll soon discover lots of other pages to spark their interest, not necessarily to do with schoolwork. Last but not least, parents will be delighted to know that Q-Files is both a safe place to go for online research on the computer at home and a reliable source of information that has been carefully vetted by experts, not stuff that turns up online and may or may not be true. Next slide, please.
The most important users of Q-Files are, of course, the students themselves. The range of content, the age-appropriate reading level, the choice of illustrations, the design of the pages, and the way you navigate between them. All these are essential qualities of a student-focused digital resource. We asked the students and teachers at the Wills School of Antipolo in the Philippines what they thought of the Q-Files site, and we've included some of their responses here. Note the wide range of year groups. We are thrilled to say they are all extremely positive. Next slide, please.
Here's a case study showing just how effective Q-Files is for making lesson plans. This writing activity was prepared by Coach in the class a South African company that produces curriculum materials for schools. The teacher based her lesson plan on a page in Q Files called Farming in Ancient Egypt. From reading the text and from study of an illustration of a farming scene that appears on the page, she asks students to demonstrate why the River Nile was so important to the people of Egypt in a series of writing tasks. The learning objectives of this lesson are selecting relevant information and learning to analyse and organise it, writing history in an organised way, creative thinking. Q Files plays a major role in helping students to achieve them. The Egyptian farming scene is one of thousands of illustrations that were produced originally for our books and are now presented on the Q Files website. They're unique to Q Files. Next slide, please. Q Files is particularly useful as a safe site for children to access tens of thousands of images and text for ICT, that's information and computer technology exercises. Teachers can also use the images from Q Files during lessons to illustrate and explain subjects. In this case study, you can see Q Files in action in a class at Pennybont School in Wales. Under the teacher's guidance, the students are working on a touchscreen, cutting out and rearranging images from the Q Files Fruits and Seeds page for labelling. They then collate the images and position them for use in a project. Next slide, please.
Q Files is specially designed for students, and they will use it for looking for answers to their questions and finding stuff out, which is why Q Files has the motto, search, read, discover. Many children will find out what Q Files has to offer for themselves, reading widely, often going beyond the school curriculum to delve into topics they love, like dinosaurs, sports, life in other countries, space travel, etc., etc. As book people ourselves, we hope that Q Files will help foster a love of reading books too. On other occasions, it will be teachers who direct children to read up in preparation for a lesson. In this example, a teacher from the UK explains how he advises his students to read 2 appropriate Q Files pages ahead of a science lesson so that they will gain the most from it. So Q Files, a digital tool that children will think is really cool, helps learning in a direct and engaging way. Next slide, please. Q Files' custom-built search engine, curated by our own editors, is one of the site's key features. Instead of serving up millions of results like Google does, it offers the user a manageable number of pages, all of which are highly relevant to the search term entered. So you can see nuclear there, and we've got the list of search results for you. This makes Q File the perfect resource for young people trying their hand at internet searches, a vital skill for the 21st century digital world. And Q Files is expert verified, certified safe, free of ads, without links to other sites, something that will please parents a lot. We asked the Bali Island School in Indonesia to tell us more about their experience. They told us that using Q File's search engine taught their students how to create targeted searches and also how to evaluate the articles they found. Next slide, please.
Q Files is a subscription site, so here are the pricing details you need to know. It covers use in the school and at home for all teachers and students. Please visit the Q Files site, browse our free pages, or sign up for a free 30-day trial. Go to our information site, qfileseducation.com, to find out more, or get in touch with us directly via email. And here's a picture of where our offices are located. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Nicholas and Sarah. We'll
Thanks,
see you
Sarah.
again once we get to the open forum.
Okay, no problem. Lovely.
Great.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So to our viewers, I hope you enjoyed the first presentation so far. And again, we'll hear more about Q Files, and you'll have the chance to ask your questions in the comments, and hopefully we'll have the chance as well to ask them and answer them during the open forum. I will now proceed to introduce our speaker, who will talk about the education in the new normal. Our speaker for this afternoon is Mr. Bipul Bhargava. Bipul works as an international schools, education technology, and early years specialist at the Department of International Trade. In his role, Bipul works with leading British education institutions to help them expand internationally. Prior to this, he served as Global Vice President at Education First, where he helped grow an online language learning business across Latin America, Europe, Middle East, and Asia. His experience also includes heading strategy and corporate development for RM Education, a UK listed education technology business and strategy consultant with Marathon Associates in London. He holds an MBA from London Business School and undergraduate degrees in mathematics and computer science. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Bipul Bhargava.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Karen. And a
Hi,
very good morning, welcome to everybody, and I guess an afternoon for those in the Philippines. Karen, I assume you've got the slides that I sent.
Yes, I will now share slides at the moment. Thank you for joining us.
No worries. Thank you for the warm welcome. So that's me about 20 years ago, I think. But as Karen said, I work as a specialist with the Department of International Trade. I've got some experience in EdTech, working for a UK EdTech company, but also global EdTech company. So what I would like to share with you today is the topic is education in the new normal. So what's really changed post-COVID? I've, of course, been in EdTech before EdTech was so cool. But what's really changed, and what are some of the drivers in EdTech? And I thought I'll start by really sort of highlighting what are the challenges that COVID has brought to us. So if you go to the next slide, Karen, if you don't mind. That's one. So with the closures of schools in the UK and across the world, there's sort of about 8 challenges or so that we see that are coming out of COVID. This, of course, isn't an exhaustive list, but just sort of highlights where are the challenges that arise post-COVID. Most EdTech companies you would speak with pre-COVID, and even now actually, will tell you that the biggest challenge they've had in adoption of technology in schools is the teachers, right? It's not the teachers themselves, but a couple of reasons. One, teachers have been extremely busy doing what they do. The second is that teachers, who've traditionally been in school, have been perhaps a bit reluctant to embrace technology. They've got too much going on to try and figure out how do I get this new technology into school. There's just too much going on. So there's been a challenge with ICT challenge for teachers. The second challenge arising out of COVID is unequal access to technology, and this is something that that every government is trying to solve, right? So how do we solve this unequal access to technology? Some people have better access to devices, internet, etc., and some people don't. If education is delivered remotely, how do you make sure that no child gets left behind purely because of technology? And of course, the UK government is doing a lot, which I can talk at length about. As a result, that's resulting in widening education gap, not just because of devices and internet, but also perhaps because of ability level, right? So special education needs comes in very importantly when children are at home as opposed to in a learning environment. There's been a significant lack of funding from the governments, from the private sector. Historically, like I said, I've been here long enough. When I started working in EdTech in 2009, the global venture capital going into EdTech was about $500 million. Last year, it reached 14 billion. So over time, there is more private investment going into EdTech, but it still wasn't enough, and we're playing a big catch up. There's a big evolving mindset, right? How do parents how to get parents thinking about the children being on devices for that long? How to get schools comfortable with children learning online anywhere, anytime? What are the policies around that? That requires an evolving mindset, starting from student, parents, teachers, schools, district, government. That's what's required in post-COVID. And it's definitely a challenge as people think about it differently. We'll talk a little bit about cybersecurity, and not just cybersecurity, but wellness, cyber wellness of children, right? With so many more people online, of course, in corporates, in higher education, etc. So how do we ensure that people are secure? How do we ensure people are safe, right? And then, of course, there are challenges around student recruitment and challenges to student mobility, etc. So next slide, please. So what I thought, I'll sort of marry that up with sort of saying, when we're saying education is the new normal, those are the challenges. What I thought I'll do, this is hot off the press, by the way. I conducted some research into where is money flowing into venture capital, into edtech in the UK. And it's actually not surprising that this mirrors the challenges that I just spoke about. So if you look at the top 5 areas of the areas where money flew in, and what I did is, because there were lots of transactions, I focused only on transactions which are greater than £5 million in revenue, so about $7.5 million US or so. Not a surprise that most of the money or the deals were in training in the B2C space. And we see a big shift as parents are making more decisions, as individuals are making decisions. We see a lot of shift of edtech from pure B2B or selling to schools, but also to B2C. And we'll cover those in a bit more areas in a bit more time. Training B2B. Corporates are taking more responsibility of how they're training their employees. Universities and schools are taking charge of how they're training the teachers, etc. Content still remains very relevant. Tutoring, as you can imagine, live tutoring became very big, very hot. Again, people are teaching remotely anyway. We might as well extend it to a bigger customer base internationally. And we saw some transactions in the LMS space. So if you go to the next slide, I'll just dig into this a bit more to add more color to it. So if you focus on 3 different areas, right? So K-12, right? So K-12, where did the money go? The money really went into 3 broad categories. First was content, which I talked about, gamification and AI. So gamification, I've been tracking this for a while. Gamification, which is how do you engage children as they learn online, right? So I've been a big believer in gamification. So children love playing video games, right? And you can't get their eyes off it. But the minute you put them in front of boring text, they lose concentration, they can't pay attention. So gamification is a way to engage children, and that we find is getting more and more traction. AI with Century raising some capital as well. I know Century is here today to talk to you about it. But how to use artificial intelligence. Again, it actually solves the same engagement problem because you personalize content based on what the child wants to hear, which eventually results in better engagement and, of course, better outcomes in general. Online tutoring, we already talked about where education was bought by a physical school chain. So we see physical school chains get into tutoring. My tutor raised some money. And like I talked about, teacher training. So with Guide Education, also focused on, which is called the Netflix of teacher training, which again makes sense given one of the challenges I talked about in the COVID slides. Next slide, please. In the higher education space, we saw Biblio, which is like a Spotify for textbooks. There's another company called Perlego, which also raised money. So again, in a world where people are remote, right? We have the mobility point in that slide on COVID challenges. Students are studying more and more using e-textbooks, right? Instead of buying expensive books. So we saw Biblio and Perlego raise a lot of money. Again, EMIS. So how do universities solve this challenge where people need to book things, need to book classes, etc. All the scheduling should be done online, which again makes complete sense. Again, the student mobility point. You saw Semestry, which is a EMIS platform raising capital. I talked about inclusive learning. Special education needs a couple of companies, EQL, etc., raise some capital, again, to make sure that no child gets left behind just because they're online. And a final slide, please, from me. And finally, in the corporate space, right, we saw, this space is absolutely hot, right? Lots of jobs being lost. We've talked at length about over the last few years about the 21st century skills, upskilling, reskilling. Those things are now really coming into light, COVID. We've seen dramatic shifts in industries. We've seen airlines, restaurants, etc., absolutely being decimated, and people moving from those jobs into something else, people realizing that they don't have one job for life. And we see a lot of money going into upskilling, technical training, reskilling. But again, I already talked about cybersecurity, compliance. Hack the Box is a great example. It raised 20 million in 2 rounds. They raised only 1 or 2 million prior to that, right? So a lot of people wanting to get into cybersecurity, which of course is getting hot. So corporate training, reskilling, people taking their own skilling quite seriously. So that's really where the money is flowing. So education, the new normal, it really is about what I divided is into those 3 areas and where the money is flowing. You'll hear from some fantastic British organizations. And why should you hear from them? Next slide, please. So what I just wanted to just sort of finish up with is why you should hear from these UK companies. So I've talked about broadly where the money is flowing into the UK, but why should you listen to the UK? Because UK is in the top 5 countries when it comes to edtech startups. Given the size of the UK, only 65 million people, we're competing with India, China, Brazil, America, large countries with a large domestic base. But UK is punching above its weight. And some of the fantastic companies you have here today will prove that. So I really hope you enjoy the presentations. I won't take much more of your time. Next slide has my email address. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. With that, all the very best. Thank you so much. Karen, over to you.
Hi again. Thanks again, Vipul, for that. It was a learning session for sure to know more about the challenges brought about by COVID-19 education. And it was interesting to hear about the trends, such as gamification and using platforms that are similar to Netflix in terms of addressing these challenges. And as mentioned, we are now going to hear more about this UK innovations in EdTech solutions for education. We've had Q Files earlier, and now we will proceed to our second company for this afternoon. Our second company is Twig Education, and our speaker is Lucy, who is the head of international partnerships. She works with schools, education publishers, and ministries of education around the world to build the next generation of scientists and engineers through Twig Education's digital resources for K-12 STEM teaching and learning. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's please welcome Miss Lucy Coverstone.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Karen has kindly introduced, my name is Lucy Cuthbertson. I'm the head of international at Twig Education here in London. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you some examples of how we're working, as Karen said, to build the next generation of scientists and engineers. And that is all through our core resource portfolio of K-12 STEM teaching and learning resources. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. To kick off, I'm just going to briefly introduce you to Twig Education and our mission. So we are an award-winning STEM publishing company, and we provide digital and print resources to more than 60 countries and in over 20 different languages. We work closely with our collaborative partners, such as Imperial College of London and Stanford University, to create and deliver high-quality and innovative K-12 STEM education programs. We have a very long-lasting relationship with the BBC, which means that we can access inspirational examples of science in action to create our short films, which are at the core of our resources. Our platforms and programs allow for very flexible implementation for either in-person or distance delivery of lessons. And throughout our resources and programs, we ensure that students are introduced to a variety of STEM careers, and so that they are equipped with the ambitions and skills to really become future scientists and engineers. Next slide, please. So today, I'm just going to share some examples of how we support STEM education from 2 of our core digital resources, TIGTAG and Twig. So TIGTAG is focused on supporting science lessons for students in grades 1 to 5, whilst Twig supports the science and maths curriculum for grades 6 to 10. Both of these resources are used by teachers and students around the world, with 55,000 students and over 1,000 teachers currently using Twig in the Philippines alone. There are a variety of short films within TIGTAG and Twig. Curriculum films contain the main teaching points for each topic, and context films use exciting examples from the real world to deepen the understanding of those topics. Twig also includes films which show scientific experiments from their setup to their real-world application. And there are also glossary films giving students definitions of key scientific vocabulary and real-world examples of their use. TIGTAG offers a range of lesson plans to allow for a lesson to be taught remotely with minimum preparation. Each topic includes a digital and downloadable ready-made 60-minute lesson plan with all the practical activities, classroom visuals, and student worksheets ready to teach instantly. Our practical activities use everyday materials which can be adapted for learning at home and assigned to students. We also provide teacher support with background knowledge for each topic to ensure that teachers have everything that they need to feel confident about the science within the topic. And finally, games and quizzes let teachers assess student progress from afar, and thousands of classroom visuals are each labelled with learning points and keywords to help visualise concepts and reinforce them at the same time. Next slide, please. As we all know, that there are many challenges in the classroom, but along with those challenges come some really interesting opportunities. I'd like to share with you today some examples of how TIGTAG and Twig are used in the science classroom to respond to these challenges, both in the Philippines and around the world. The first challenge we have is to inspire the next generation of scientists and engineers. To inspire children at an early age, we really need to develop and nurture those skills needed for future study and future careers. Young children are really inquisitive about the world around them. They can have lots of burning questions that teachers don't always have the answer to. And within TIGTAG, you can find those answers to those big questions. And with Twig, we encourage students to follow their interests and find the answers themselves. All of our short films support visual learning, bringing science to life and providing a truly immersive learning experience in both synchronous and asynchronous modes of learning. We can really help students to see things that they just wouldn't be able to see in their everyday lives. Also, all of our films have been designed to get across very specific curricular learning points. These are broken down into just the right amount of information for maximum student engagement. In addition, the very nature of our film production means that our films can supplement and adapt to any curriculum, including international and national standards, such as that of the DepEd curriculum. Next slide, please. All of our materials have been designed to develop higher order thinking skills. Instead of just remembering and understanding, we want students to analyse and use the information that they have retained. Part of that relates to our range of suggested practical activities, our range of filmed experiments, and our encouragement of students to come up with the questions and seek out the solution for themselves. There is a wealth of evidence which shows that incorporating video content improves student engagement and improved in student achievement levels. Researchers also find that pedagogical benefits of incorporating videos into teaching, such as increased student motivation, enhanced learning experiences, and higher achievement in exams. Twig films allow students to work at their own pace and help them recognise language that they may see later on in an exam, which will hopefully increase their grade. We've seen many, many examples of schools using TIGTAG and Twig right through K-10, with students building core knowledge that they'll be able to call on in an assessment situation and therefore improve their overall attainment. In addition, the key built-in learning points, quizzes, review questions, and many other features gives teachers an easy way to monitor what students are learning and what they may need to spend more time on. Next slide, please. We understand the critical importance of blending learning and practical work as well as collaborative learning. Our Twig experiments help students to better understand the purpose of those practical lessons and how they relate to the scientific theory and the world around them. Our lesson plans encourage students to team up, develop and test ideas, appreciate each other's creativity, and talk about their successes and failures. We also know that to be a fully supportive resource, we need to explain the background of a topic to help our non-specialist science teachers feel confident about the subject delivery. A confident teacher, as you know, is critical for students to feel inspired and engaged. Also, we know that having to organise a science curriculum can be daunting. You only have so much time to devote to a subject area. That's why we guide teachers toward our timed lesson plans, which can fit an introduction to the topic, short or longer lesson periods, and advanced learning times to suit differentiated learners. Next slide, please. Our films can help students to grasp difficult concepts, leading to a deeper understanding of a subject. We hear from so many of our teachers that visual resources help students have some idea of an abstract concept, and that is something that is achieved very well through a digital resource like TIGTAG or Twig. Finally, preparing students for STEM careers. Getting children involved in STEM and exposed to a wide variety of STEM careers in early age is really important, not just for understanding and value of the world around them, but to make sure that they go on to further scientific study at higher education. With Twig and TIGTAG, we have many, many examples of where a teacher says they're about to do science, there'll be smiles and sometimes cheers. And that student engagement is at the core of our mission. Next slide, please. So I hope that this short presentation has given you some examples of how TIGTAG and Twig can inspire, educate and support teachers and students, and gives you some inspiration of bringing digital into your classroom. To really understand the impact of Twig education, I would love to show you one of our short films, which is unfortunately something that's not been possible today. So please, if you can, take a look at one of our websites, TIGTAG for grades 1 to 5, Twig for grades 5 to 10. Or please feel free to contact me via email if you have any questions at all. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much, Lucy. And we'll hear more again about Twig, hopefully at the open forum in a few minutes. Okay, for those of you who have just joined us, again, welcome to the UK-Philippine Knowledge Sharing Session on Digital Education for K-12. We've heard so far from our edX specialist, Mr. Vipul Bargava, and from 2 UK companies, Q-Files and Twig Education. And don't leave yet because we have 2 more companies to hear from. And if you have any questions so far from based on what you've heard, please don't forget that you have the opportunity to type in your questions in the comment section on Facebook or YouTube, whichever platform you are currently using. Our next UK company is called Century Tech, and this will be presented to us by Mr. Will Hall. Before joining Century Tech as curriculum lead, Will was the head of mathematics at a London secondary school. Having spent 3 years creating mathematics resources and partly overseeing the curriculum team, he now works in business development. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Will Hall.
Hi everyone. It's lovely to see you all today. Thank you ever so much for having me. I'd love to just jump straight in to talk about Century. So if I could get the first slide up, please, that would be wonderful. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Excellent. So what I'm going to do today, we've got a short amount of time, so I'm going to take you on a kind of whistle-stop tour of some of our recent projects around the world. Before I do that, though, I just want to briefly explain why we built Century and what problems we're trying to overcome. So if I could have the next slide, please. Excellent. So in short, at Century, we believe every student deserves a world-class education tailored to their individual needs. What really underpins the work we do at Century and why we built the platform that we have is because the one-size-fits-all model of education simply doesn't work. I taught for many years in various schools around London, and I mean, there's going to be lots and lots of teachers watching this today. You think of your class of students, those 30 students you have in front of you, can you truly differentiate your teaching to suit the needs of every single student in that class? And of course you can't. It's an incredibly difficult ask. And so what we've done at Century is we've combined learning science, so pedagogy, teachers, we have lots of teachers working in the company like myself, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and neuroscience to create a platform that offers true personalization to students, that learns with them, that will support them, that will challenge them, that will reassess them to make sure they've retained information. And it does this without teachers having to spend loads and loads of time on the platform. The teacher side of Century is all about data. It's about giving teachers purposeful assessment for learning data and giving it to them quickly so they can make the interventions that they need to do in their class to support their learners. And on the other side, on the student side, it's an opportunity for them to get truly personalized learning. And we'll talk about content and the platform a little bit later on. But if I could go to the next slide, please, Karen. Excellent. How Century works. Well, I've alluded to the recommended pathway. So this recommended pathway has formative and summative assessments in it, and that will constantly adapt and change as the student uses it to take them through whichever courses they're studying on the platform. Very easy to use dashboards for the student side. So there we're looking at metacognition, how your learners understand themselves, their strengths, their weaknesses, what they need to do to improve. And that student dashboard will constantly be updating in real time. For the teachers, it's about a granular data display of what do your students struggle with? What type of question in English, math, or science do they need help with the most? And of course, that's all underpinned with world-class learning resources. Now, in the company and the team I used to work in, we've produced just over 5,000 micro lessons in English, math, and science from age 6 to 16. But our content is localized, it's translated, our platform is translated all around the world. And that's what I'm going to focus on for the rest of this presentation, the work we've been doing around the world. If I could have the next slide, please. Oh, we appear to have frozen. Is it possible to go to the next one, please, Karen? Lovely, thank you so much. So the City School in Pakistan, this is one of our recent projects that we're incredibly proud of. The City School in Pakistan has over 150 schools and over 50,000 students, pre-K to 12. Century launched there just over a year ago now for grade 3 to 10 students. And really, I'm not sure if you can see the numbers on this graph, but the numbers are absolutely phenomenal. Just 6 months post the launch, students have answered over 16 million curriculum-aligned questions, and that number is continuously rising. There's over 28,000 students that we onboarded. And obviously, because of COVID, a big part of our business model in general is training and change management for teachers, for senior leaders, for stakeholders. We managed to train 2,000 teachers, which is no mean feat, remotely, how to use Century, how to embed it. And we can see just from this graph here, the incredible usage. And to think the work that those students are being given, those 16 million questions they've been answering, they're being selected for those learners based on their individual needs, based on our platform adapting and changing to support them. So we're incredibly proud of what we've been doing recently in Pakistan. Can I have the next slide, please? Lovely. There's just a lovely quote there. I won't read the quote out. This presentation is going to be shared. The highlights for that, for me, though, is independent learning. The idea that you can embed a platform for so many learners and overnight, or instantly, really, it's going to adapt to their needs and provide them learning material straight away. The fact that we've become invaluable there in such a short amount of time, considering the huge amount of work we did to make sure the platform would fit, the curriculum alignment, it's incredible for us to read things like this. Karen, can I go to the next slide, please? Thank you. Slightly different part of the world, but we've recently launched in Panama, and we're always excited to launch in a different country. I mean, currently now, Century is in just over 45 countries around the world. Very small school in Panama, but again, just in such a short amount of time, the students there have been able to answer just over 250,000 questions. And the key for the statistics here is the learner misconceptions, that 2,000 number. So for a very small school of students, our platform has identified 2,000 misconceptions. To think how you would do that manually, to create all of that data yourselves, it's a huge amount of work. And a big point of what we do at Century is to try and reduce teacher workload. So it's very exciting for us, and we love being in new countries. We've just launched in Brazil recently as well. So yeah, very exciting times. Karen, can we please go to the next slide? Lovely. Content and curriculum. So I've mentioned this already, but our English medium content, out of the box Century as we call it, has over 5,000 micro lessons for math, science and English. That's for ages 7 to 16. But also our platform is content agnostic, and we've had our content translated into Spanish, into Arabic. We've localized curricula for different countries and different education systems all around the world. So we're very keen to work in the Philippines. We'd love to get involved. As well, the way we can launch, we can be working with your students, with your teachers incredibly quickly. Next slide, please, Karen. Thank you. I don't really have time to go through all those lovely numbers, but this is some of the statistics on the usage of the platform and the impact it's been having. I'd highly recommend, though, if you've been interested in anything I've said today, get yourself on our website. There's so many lovely case studies there about all the different places we're working around the world, and some testimonies from students and teachers. And the next slide, please, Karen. Lovely. Well, look, find out more. One thing I wasn't able to do today, which I would have loved to have done, is to give you a thorough demonstration of the platform, actually show it to you, let you have a go, give you some logins. You can try it out with your classes, with your students. So please do get in touch. The easiest way to get in touch is to send an email. There's our email address, info@century.tech. Get yourself on our website. As a company, we work in many different ways. An obvious one, as I mentioned or alluded to throughout this, is Century out of the box. So the Century platform, our English medium content for schools, school groups, resellers, governments. But we also offer Century as a platform as well, or to power existing platforms and use our intelligence and our artificial intelligence to create intelligence layers to platforms that already exist. So please do reach out, get in touch. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to give you a full demonstration. Thank you ever so much for having us today. You can go to the final slide, Karen. Thank you. Have a lovely day. Thank you for having us.
Thanks again, Will. We'll hear more about Century Tech during the open forum. Same with our other guests. Thanks. We will now proceed to the last but not the least, of course, of our UK companies for this afternoon. This company is called TES Institute, and it will be presented to us by Ms. Sarah Tate. Sarah has worked in the education industry for 20 years in schools, colleges, universities, and private and public companies. She moved to Malaysia 10 years ago and joined the British High Commission as Program Manager for Education is Great, promoting UK education through B2G and B2B initiatives. In 2019, she joined TES Institute as International Partnerships Manager, supporting schools around the world with initial teacher training and professional development. She met a lot of passionate, inspiring, and dedicated teachers across ASEAN, and she supports them to develop their teaching practice, leading to improved student outcomes and opportunities for career progression. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Sarah Tate.
Good afternoon. Hi, Karen. Hi, everybody. Thank you for staying online to listen to me. I appreciate that very much. As Karen just mentioned, I'm the International Partnerships Manager for TES Institute, which is the initial teacher training department of TES. Could we move to the first slide, please? Hi, so you can see that my email is sarah.tate@tes.com. So if you have any questions following this presentation, please do feel free to reach out to me, or you can check out our website, which is a comprehensive website with information on all our different products at tes.com. I'm going to talk to you today about our initial teacher training. Could we move on to the next slide? But first of all, I'm going to tell you a little bit about TES. I'm assuming some of you may have already heard of us. We're 111 years old. The company initially started back in 1910 as an education supplement as part of the Times newspaper. And we're a global education leader. We've developed significantly over the past few years. And we have a big suite of services and products that support schools and school leaders, whether that is with teacher training. We have professional development programs. Teachers can access and download resources and news. We have child safeguarding and reporting training. And of course, most importantly, and probably where most schools have heard of us, is our recruitment of teachers and school leaders around the world. But most importantly, what we really do is we empower schools to enable great teaching worldwide. And we have these intelligent online products and services that really make a difference within education. Can we move on to the next slide? So I mentioned TES Institute. It's the Accredited Teacher Training and Development arm of TES. And we work across about 124 countries around the world, predominantly with international schools and private schools, but also with some local schools as well. And APAC, Asia Pacific, is one of our biggest markets, and we're working with schools across about 15 countries at the moment just in this region. You can see we've provided over 1.8 million hours of subject knowledge training to teachers, and we've qualified over 2,000 teachers around the world. So we've got significant experience in this area. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So really, what we were trying to do, obviously, with our teacher training is we're trying to provide solutions to key challenges that schools are facing around the world. And it's important to consider those challenges in the sector. As you may have heard, by 2030, there's going to be a significant shortage of teachers. 69 million teachers need recruiting in order to achieve universal primary and secondary education by 2030. So it's important that we're helping teachers and schools address these challenges. And one of the key areas we're helping in is teacher training to ensure that we're providing robust and scalable solutions. And we're seeing that obviously we need a significant amount of new teachers, but the opportunities really are there for locally educated graduate teachers to really upskill and develop themselves, not only to work in their local schools, but also to seek opportunities within the international school sector, which is rapidly growing across the APAC region. Can we have the next slide, please? So I'm going to give you a little bit of a quick overview in some of the programs that we offer. And obviously I'd be delighted to expand on this either during the question and answer session, or you can email me direct and I'll be able to do that. All of our courses are delivered online and they're self-guided, and they include access to a global network of supporting tutors and mentors. And this ensures that we provide these robust and scalable solutions for schools. Our international teaching programs really do help raise the teaching standards in a flexible and cost-effective way. And we provide teaching staff with knowledge of recognised best practice in a flexible way, whilst the teachers can continue to work within the schools. And that's really key. Teachers are not having to leave work to go and study. They can do this as part of their continued role within the school. Initially, I'll talk about the initial teacher practice program. And this was predominantly developed for international schools wanting to upskill local teachers. And it covers a range of practices, including differentiation, assessment, classroom management, and supporting inclusion. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we move forward. I've got a case study at the end, which was delivered in local schools within Malaysia. Moving on, we have the IPGCE, which is probably one of our most well-known programs. And this provides a master's level course. It's 60 credits at master's level, and it's delivered in conjunction with the University of East London. We build upon their teachers' professional experience, and we really link theory and research with this program, looking at policy and practice in international education and development. And this is a 12-month program. So teachers will engage for the full year. Moving on, we also have the assessment only, and this enables teachers to be independently assessed against the English teachers standard. So it gives them a qualification which enables them to not only move abroad and work in international schools, but also work in the UK. We have subject knowledge enhancement for teachers, and this enables teachers to develop their subject knowledge or look at taking on board another specialist subject. And this is really key for schools that don't want to recruit additional teachers. You can upskill the teachers that you already have, and they can look at a second specialist subject. It also helps build teacher confidence, especially if they've been out of the classroom for a while and they're looking to return to teaching, and they just want to kind of refresh their knowledge in a particular subject area. Finally, we have TES Safeguarding, and this is a really popular program. It's a CPD program. They're short 1-hour modules, but it really gives a whole school solution. around child safeguarding and reporting. And we find that obviously in the last 18 months, this has become key to a lot of schools, especially preparing for students to return to school. So that gives a really broad, brief kind of overview of some of the programs we have. Could we move on to the next slide, please? And I'm really keen to share, really happy to share this information. This is a case study that we conducted in September in Malaysia. And although the ITP, the International Teaching Practice Programme, was initially developed for local teachers looking to join international schools, we wanted to establish how robust and resilient these practices were, and also how relevant the programme was for local teachers in ASEAN. So in 2020, we partnered with an organisation called LEAPED, and LEAPED run a trust school programme across Malaysia. They have 90 schools, and they're looking at school transformation from leadership and teaching practice within the schools. And I think what this really gave us was an opportunity to explore how local teachers would find the programme, but also the accessibility. So when we looked at it, we were very keen to have schools in urban locations, but also in remote locations. And two of the schools that we worked with were based in East Malaysia, over in Sabah and Sarawak. And we wanted to make sure that they had the connectivity and that this, obviously online learning, had that ease of access for them. So we took 10 experienced teachers. It was only a kind of small pilot at this stage. And they were based in 8 schools that were responsible for 7,000 students. And we used urban and remote schools. And we also hosted the pilot across primary and secondary. And the objectives were to ascertain whether the Malaysian government teachers would find this programme relevant, to understand whether or not they would recommend this to their fellow colleagues once they'd completed the programme, and also identify maybe areas of the programme that we could adapt and maybe make more relevant for that kind of local teachers. Could we move on to the next slide for me, please? So this is kind of some of the feedback that we've had from that pilot, and it was quite interesting that at the midpoint when we had the reflection, our score in terms of net promoters was actually very low, and we realised that we needed to manage the expectations of the teachers. There was a lot of anxiety around writing in English, and not so much reading in English, but writing reflections, and especially when they were writing for that to then be submitted to be assessed. So having kind of engaged with the teachers and assured them that actually it was the content that we were interested in. We were interested in their reflections, and their grammar and their language was not the main element that we were looking for. We found that actually following this, we saw confidence levels increase significantly and engagement levels increase significantly. And as you can see, our endpoint reflection, we went from -20 at midpoint to 100 at endpoint reflection. And we can see that, you know, the questions that we set out at the beginning of the pilot, 90% of participants thought the programme content was relevant for them, even though working in a local school. 100% would recommend it to colleagues, and that we were really, really excited about. In terms of aspects where they felt maybe we could improve, obviously a language glossary, because we'd already highlighted those challenges in terms of writing in English. And obviously one of the other parts that they found really challenging was that motivating to self-study, which when you're teaching and you've maybe got a family, that's going to be incredibly challenging anyway. But also we were hit with COVID. So as the pilot started in 2020, the schools in Malaysia closed. So we found that a lot of the teachers that were learning on the programme were actually faced with now having to adapt their teaching online. But actually they did bring a lot of the theory and practice with them. And what we have done is we've set up a new monitoring and evaluation study to take place now the schools have reopened. So students are now returning, and we're really excited to see what kind of impact they're bringing into the classroom. Can we have the last slide, please? And this is really just some feedback from one of the teachers that I thought I would share with you. Juliani is a teacher who's worked for 20 years. And I thought her feedback was really interesting because she's been part of other teacher training programs, especially through the Trust School program that LEAP had run. But what she said is that this program really did help her see the bigger picture, and it brought a lot of ideas together for her. And the program helped her take her teaching practice to a whole new level. And that's really exciting because after 20 years in the classroom, we can see that we're having real and significant impact with these teachers. And you can see some of the other takeaways down the right-hand side, that what the teachers fed back to us at the end in terms of how they'll organise their class and evaluate their students with assessment, how they'll take their the students with different interests and learning and give them their full form in the class. And they'll practice differentiating teaching with the students in the classroom and use more progress signifiers to alert when they're teaching in the classroom. So I feel that some of those outcomes are really exciting. And as we move forward and we're managing to actually see this actually take place in the classroom and these teachers, what impact the program has had with them, I think that there will be some really exciting outcomes. So that just gives you a really kind of quick overview of the kind of impact we're having here in ASEAN and some of the programs that we have as part of TES Institute. And as I mentioned at the beginning, be really delighted to hear from you either in questions at the end, or you can reach out to me at sarah.tate@tes.com, and I'll be really happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And thank you as well to all of our speakers. So we've actually heard from everyone, and it's now our opportunity to bring everyone back in for our open forum. So once again, we have Representatives Nicholas and Sarah from Q-Files, a digital resource learning or reference library. We also have Miss Lucy Cuthbertson from Twig Education, who provides effective content for K-12 STEM teaching and learning. Then again, we'll call back Will Hall from CentriTech, who provides AI platforms for assessment, analytics, and performance, basically teaching and learning all together in one platform. And Sarah Tate, who we just heard from TES Institute, providing training and development programs for teachers. And last but not the least, Vipul Vargaba, the EdTech specialist from the Department for International Trade. Okay, I hope so. You're all here. Thanks everyone again for the very informative and very good presentations that we've had to date. We have a few questions from our audience. I'll start with the first one, and I think this first one is for everyone. And again, maybe answer in a few sentences, or anyone else can start or jump in. First, to what extent will integration of information technology or EdTech in education be seen to continue? So some schools are starting to have face-to-face classes, or moving slowly towards that blended learning. But again, to what extent will integration of information technology is seen to continue in the near future for education? I hope that made sense.
I'm happy to start if you want, Karen.
Thanks, Vipul.
Sure. Look, so I think it's like with technology. I think it's very hard to go back once you've tried something. Imagine not having WhatsApp anymore. Somebody said, will people still use WhatsApp? Of course they will, because once you got used to something, that's what you do, right? So, I mean, I definitely think EdTech, it's been long coming. I think we're probably a bit late, and COVID provided a shot in the arm. So I think given the benefits we've seen, I absolutely think that it's here to stay. It'll change how we do things. For example, and by the way, EdTech isn't just about online learning. There's so much more to it, right? So the best example I'd heard was, so I have two kids, right? And so the parent-teacher meeting, I used to go and line up in school for a 5-minute chat with the teacher. Now it's all done remotely. And, so the teacher comes one by one. I don't see myself going back to school, queuing up for my kids' parent-teacher meeting. It's just not going to do. So I think there are so many things about EdTech that are here to stay, but it's human behavior to think everything will change, right? So of course not, right? I think there's a good middle ground, but I think I'm almost betting that EdTech is here to stay and grow from here on. That's my view.
Yeah, I'd love to add to that. I couldn't agree more. I think for us, philosophically, the most important element of a child's education will always be teachers, without a doubt. EdTech is not in any way, no EdTech should be aiming to replace them. Good education technology in this generation of EdTech, what it should be doing is freeing up teachers to teach, to do what they're brilliant at. And, you know, as Vipul just explained perfectly, there's so many platforms that can help alleviate those pressures and also to help support students in different ways. There are things that technology is simply better at that can be used to alleviate those pressures, to support teachers, educators, parents, guardians, when there's so many stakeholders in education. So I think it's absolutely here to stay. It should be as well, should be developed and implemented well, inherently to improve outcomes.
Thanks, people. Thanks, Will. I agree. I should agree. We've seen the benefits of EdTech to date, and we should take advantage of those moving forward, whatever platforms that we've developed so far. And again, improve teacher outcomes and free them up to do what they do best, which is teaching. Anyone else, I guess, from the group?
Yeah, I mean, I would really just probably like to add that I think it's the students driving this adoption now. I have 2 teenage students in secondary, and I can see the difference in them in terms of how they're engaging with their school online. And they have just gone back into the classroom and are very much kind of, we'd like to go back online. And I don't think that that's a disservice to the teachers. I think that that is just the way that they have really adapted over the past 18 months. And I think for us with teacher training, the beauty of online teacher training, it's very difficult to go into schools and do face-to-face training at the moment. They certainly probably don't want external visitors coming onto campus. So I think that this gives them a really flexible and affordable solution. It's obviously a lot cheaper to do teacher training online than to bring in a specialist as well.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. Anything else from Lucy or Nick?
I think we would just echo what Sarah just said. I think the existence of the internet, as far as Q-Files is concerned, is the minimal technology that's required, and no one's going to disinvent the internet. And it obviously offers a huge amount extra in terms of, for example, a library has a finite number of books to which pupils can only gain access at a certain time, whereas, for example, Q-Files means that they can access it 24/7, any book at any time. So that's just a tiny example of how EdTech at its very basic level is here to stay, because it makes life so much easier.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think the pandemic has just accelerated the expansion of EdTech, and I think from what we've seen, our content and resources have been just in demand across the world. And I think once that's embedded into curricula and learning standards, I think it's hard to extract that. But I think we have to appreciate that blended learning is important, and we can't just be so reliant on digital. We have to see how digital can work with the classroom and supporting teachers.
Yeah. Great. Yes, understood. I think many of our teachers here have also slowly learned to adopt as well to online platforms and how this could be used, or EdTech solutions for their school. And I acknowledge that they see the advantages of that. There's a second question now that we have. As we all know, in the Philippines and in many other regions, internet connectivity is still a common issue encountered by many teachers and students. Can you share how your platforms could still be used or maximized even if it's possibly offline?
I can start with that one. So obviously, our resources are focused on film content and the streaming of film content to a classroom environment. So that's obviously very difficult, in areas of internet non-connectivity. So we would work with partners that would potentially provide content offline. For example, we are partnering with UNICEF. They have a fantastic project called the Learning Passport, where all content is downloaded onto hardware. So I think we have to make adaptations for offline use for sure.
Yes, for us as well, it's a similar situation in that we are online. However, each page can be downloaded when there is internet in order to use it offline. And we're also working on some solutions to make the entire site available completely offline, downloaded onto an external hard drive or a server or something similar. So, yeah.
Yeah, we've done things quite similar. I mean, a difficulty for us is our platform is learning all of the time. It's machine learning, so it does require internet access to get those capabilities. It can operate on very low bandwidth, so 3G or below. If you can load a YouTube video, you can access Century Tech Live and have all of those features. But we have also worked with countries before to localize Century into servers. You don't get exactly the same benefits there, but there are options. But yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah. Sorry, shall I? I'd also like to mention that obviously we do online teacher training. A lot of our resources are available to download as well offline. And actually the way that the program works is they don't actually need to be online for most of the program. Those videos and the teacher resources and things they can access flexibly. So maybe when they're in the classroom, they can download them and then take them home and view them.
Thanks. I think there's a bit of a lag on my end. So it's good to know that many of the platforms and solutions that we have could also be or still be accessed offline. And there are ways for, again, Filipino schools and teachers to do that and avail of that. The next question that we have, and it's not a trick question, but it is a question. Are these sites or resources or learning resources free? And there's a specific one. Are the teacher development programs at TES for free, or how do we pay for these fees? So I guess in what ways can we avail of the services or products that your companies provide?
Okay, so I can go first. Unfortunately, they're not free. They are reasonably priced. And we do have scalable solutions. So if a school wished to purchase more than one program, or they were looking to upskill a number of teachers within the school, and obviously with economies of scale, we can look at pricing accordingly with discounts and things. But the pricing for some of the postgraduate programs starts at around £3,500. And again, we have a lot of flexibility. So if you'd like to contact me direct, then I can obviously discuss that with you.
Thank you, Sarah.
For us, we are $125 per school per year, and then that's for up to 250 students, and then each additional student would be $50 cents per year. So we are fairly low cost, and again, we can offer some scalable solutions. So, for example, if there's several schools that wish to purchase in a group, then we could offer some discounts based on that.
We also have a generous 30-day free trial period.
Good to know.
So.
Yeah, we also have a 30-day free trial, but we also have quite a few films and quite a few modules on topics of content available for free for anybody who wishes to browse and not log in. But most interestingly, we do have another resource, which I haven't mentioned today, called Twig Science Reporter, which is completely free, and it's focused on topical science for elementary schools, and that has some fantastic content delivered on a regular basis to help integrate science on the world around them on a regular basis. So try that one.
Finally, yeah, basically to echo kind of how Sarah answered the question, our pricing is very much scalable. If a group of schools, governments want Century, we will make it work. We will keep our costs appropriate for wherever we are. We're also so keen to do and run pilots. We do this everywhere that we work. So please do get in contact and we can talk about that in more detail.
So thank you very much. Again, administrators and teachers, you've heard their answers. Sadly, these are not free, but there are scalable solutions and trial periods. And again, I'm sure our companies are more than happy to have discussions with you on what your needs are, and we could better adapt to that and see what works for both ends. Okay. Another question that we have is, again, for everyone, how can we integrate EdTech to remote areas? So I would presume these are areas, again, which are very much lacking in access to technology or access to connectivity. So how do you see that happening, I guess, whether in general or for your own programs or platforms? Or if there are any case studies that you've had in the region?
Well, we had our case study, which we did in Sabah and Sarawak with quite remote schools, to address that predominantly to look at the accessibility and connectivity, especially in schools that are remote in the region. And actually, the feedback was that there were few issues because they're not downloading a lot of content and they're not having to stream a lot of content. We found that schools with actually quite limited connectivity were still able to take the programs without too many problems. But I realized that, the further the remote schools are, it does become a challenge for them. So for us, because we don't have a significant high kind of definition videos and things, the actual streamability is not so much of an issue for us, and we've kind of managed okay in terms of our pilots. We've not had any really negative feedback in case of that, but yeah.
Thank you, Sarah.
From our side, we've had to adapt to certain situations like this, and we have seen some examples of schools where the students will have mobile phones and they will encourage students to download resources in school using the school Wi-Fi, which then they can review when they are at a bus stop or at home. But yes, I think it's all about finding solutions for downloading offline, low-res streaming, and working with partners such as hardware suppliers.
Yeah, basically to echo those answers, we put a huge amount of research and time into lowering our bandwidth requirements, resolutions, adapting the platform so it can operate on cell phones as well. So we've worked in countries with poor internet infrastructure. We have gone the extreme way of making the platform localized on servers, and that's always potentially an option to discuss at various high levels, but really it's about the low impact on devices that are more available if other internet-enabled devices aren't.
For us, sorry.
Go on, Sarah.
We've partnered with a couple of organisations to provide Q files to some areas in Kenya and also some other areas in Africa via World Reader. And we actually created the site as a series of ebooks in order that students could download them onto their phone and access them that way. So that was a very good solution for those areas. So I think it's just about being flexible in how you supply the material, and we would always be happy to work in different ways.
Yeah, and another example that we have, I guess it's not strictly EdTech, but we worked with quite a number of governments throughout the pandemic, primarily in Latin America, where we actually had our films broadcast on national television by the Ministry of Education, where the films were integrated into lesson plans. It's all about working with the existing infrastructure and trying to integrate EdTech into those systems.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to hear again that our UK companies have this also very much in mind, how we can adopt our offer to make it more accessible again to these types of areas. I'll go to the next question, which I think is more for Vipul. You've mentioned that UK is among the top 5 countries in EdTech. How unique is the UK EdTech offer?
Sure. By the way, I'm not sure if you can see me because I can see a black screen on my speaker.
You're frozen, but we can hear you.
Okay, that's just very bizarre. So I apologize for internet connectivity issues. I'm certainly facing some here in London. I think I know I talked about this, right? So how unique is the UK tech offer? So, I actually think what's most unique about the UK tech offer, which probably was clear from the conversations you heard today, is the other countries. Let's look at the other top 4 countries: India, China, Brazil, US. So the world's most valuable tech company now is Baidu, and now they're starting to explore the US. But they grew largely by serving the domestic market, right? The Indian market. The UK tech companies, all of us here today, they don't start off saying, "Hey, we're going to be the number 1 company in the UK," and that's it, because it's a very small market. So a lot of these tech companies were set up saying, "How can we be international?" From the day we sort of set up. So what's really unique about edtech companies is they're British edtech companies is that they're very flexible to whichever country. And and the answer to the previous question was attested to that. They can be flexible in terms of pricing, language, bandwidth requirements, etc. Right. So because British companies are sort of from the get-go are flexible. The other thing which is quite unique, I think, I'm sort of working across the world, is that a lot of UK companies focus on efficacy, and I think that's not talked about enough, right? How people can deploy technology for the sake of technology, right? But a lot of British companies focus on edtech efficacy. Does this actually deliver the outcomes we want? And I think a lot of British companies, again, all the ones here, focus very much on that, which I think is quite unique. Right, so I can of course go on, why they're unique, and of course we see a lot of competition for UK coming up, right? We see a lot of interesting countries coming up with good solutions, but I think UK has got such a strong history in edtech as well. One of the earliest adopters of whiteboards, back in the 90s. I think UK's got the rich history, the strong education pedagogy, of course, all universities, etc. Combined with good technology, I think that's what makes UK quite unique.
Thank you very much, people. We heard everything, although, as mentioned, you're slightly frozen, but at least we could still see your face. Thank you for that. There you are. Is there anyone else amongst the companies who would like to comment on EdTech in the UK before we move on to the next question? Okay. Another question that we have is, we love the information in each of the sites, but we'd be extremely grateful to see the competencies in our curriculum in a different sites introduced. Would this be possible? So my understanding of this question is, for each of the teachers, you have various competencies that you want to meet, or I guess measure or match for your students, and how are you able to, I guess, see that or match that with your curriculum with your platforms? Would this be possible?
Yeah, I'll go first. That's okay. In short, yes, it is possible, very much so. So our platform, the content that sits within Sentry, our English medium content as an example, is modular. Our platform also delivers content as and when students need it, but anything you see on the platform can be moved around, can be changed, courses can be created. When you come on board with Sentry, you have an account manager who does this very thing with you. But look, let's have a chat. We have a demonstration of Sentry and we talk through all the content on there, but anything you need for it to be moved around, localized, redesigned, yes, is the answer to your question.
I can go next. So we have already mapped and aligned our content to over 20 different curricula internationally. So, and we have done that for all the Philippine basic K-12 curriculum. So that's already available, and we can make it available if anybody wants to get in touch. And in terms of localizing to language, that is something that we have a lot of competency in already, 20 different languages and counting.
Well, because Q-Files is encyclopedic in its scope, it's the curriculum in any particular country or region forms only a small part of what Q-Files can offer. I suppose it does require a teacher and students to use Q-Files appropriately to find answers to the questions that they have and how it adapts to the lessons that they have coming up before them. So that's probably the only way I can answer this question. We're not very specific in terms of classroom structure, but that is the way that QFiles is designed, and as a result, it's extremely versatile.
Can I just add, obviously ours isn't curriculum focused, but we have looked at the Southeast Asia Ministry of Education's teacher competency framework, and a lot of our programs are mapped against that. So you can ensure that obviously what we're teaching you is applicable within the frameworks within the individual countries across ASEAN.
Okay, thank you for that. I have one, I guess we probably will get to 2 more questions or so. This next question is specific for TES. Since most of our audience are teachers, how can they access the available training programs of TES Institute? And could they finish the courses at their own pace?
So yes, they can access all the programs if they go to tes.com, and there's a link there through to TES Institute. It will give them really comprehensive information on all the programs, and also there's an online inquiry form. So if you do want specific information, and also our program directors will be able to feed back to you as well if you have any particular inquiries. So yeah, that's a really easy way to kind of understand more, or you can also reach out to me as well, and I'm able to kind of give you some more information at school level. So that's, yeah, sorry, what was the rest of it? How can they finish the courses in their own pace? Yes, I mean, some of the programs do have a specific timeline that you need to obviously adapt to, but some of the programs really do have flexibility. So the international teaching practice, it says 12 weeks, but actually 90% of the teachers that do this finish it within 8 weeks. We give them an extra period of time, so you have that flexibility built in, and we're very keen to make sure that all our programs have that kind of contingency of time where possible. So you can learn at your own pace, you can do it online at home, you can work within the school, and although there's key milestones that you need to hit, actually it is really flexible.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah. Next question, how do you accommodate the different levels of ESL learners, ensuring that no student is left behind? So I don't know.
I can go on that. We have a version of our elementary platform TIGTAG, which is a CLIL version, Content Language Integrated Learning, and that focuses on all of our films are available with a simplified English version. So they have we've made the content a lot more simple, but there's also a wealth of resources then which will support a teacher that is maybe an English learner themselves, and help the students to integrate English vocabulary, writing, listening into their scientific learning.
Great, thanks, Lucy.
QFiles has a set of, in fact, hundreds of pages under the label Let's Explore, which has many of the content of subjects of QFiles explained for much younger children on the one hand, and for people who are in need of a simpler language to understand. And so it operates on 2 different levels. So we have that to ensure that that no student is left behind working with QFiles.
And on Sentry, well, the beauty of the Sentry platform is that it recommends micro lessons to learners based on what they need, on their ability. And so the platform we have such a large bank of lessons, that the platform will find suitable material for any learner with any ability.
I suppose for us, we have language glossaries, and we don't have in all the languages, but depending upon volume of students or learners wanted to take our programs, that's certainly something that we can consider. And we have obviously our pathway tutors and our mentors that are there to support teachers, so that if they do find that they're struggling to understand something, we have that online support available as well.
Okay, thank you for that. This might be the last question. How about the integrity of examinations and activities? Could you share how we could ensure integrity of exam results using online platforms?
Yes. Well, the learning on Sentry, the majority of the learning on Sentry are formative assessments. So the micro lessons students complete, they are supported throughout, and that's what we want because that's going to build retention. So that's kind of low stakes learning where learners are able to look at notes, to see videos, to learn through feedback. We have summative assessment on the platform as well. We don't view those as quote unquote exams. They're not meant to be seen as high stakes. They're meant to be seen as baselines to find weakness that then the platform can help. We don't give feedback to learners in those summative assessments. But the current iteration of Sentry isn't designed at its core to be an examination tool in that sense.
Okay, thank you very much, Will. I think we're almost running out of time. I would like to give the chance for each of the speakers, I guess, to say your last bit, whatever you want to share for our audience here in the Philippines before we end today's session. Let's start with Q Files. Again, Sarah and Nicholas.
Yeah, so just wanted to say thank you so much for listening to our presentation and all of it. And if anyone has any queries at all, just contact us and you can get in touch on info@qfiles.com. So thank you very much.
Nicholas, anything to add?
Oh, no, I thought that Sarah summed it up beautifully.
Okay, sorry to put pressure on you.
I wasn't expecting that.
Yes, yeah, again, thank you so much for allowing us the opportunity to share what we do. And yes, I'm wishing you all the best of luck with integrating digital into your lesson frameworks. And if there's anything we can do to help, please get in touch with us at Twig.
Great, thanks, Lucy. Will?
Yeah, thank you, really. Thank you for having us. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk about Sentry. Please do get in contact. We'd love to work in the Philippines. Reach out. Our email address, info@sentry.tech, and we can discuss and show you the platform in a bit more detail. But yeah, thank you.
And last but not least, of course, Sarah.
Yeah, just to reiterate what everybody else has said, thank you very much for listening this afternoon. It's been a real pleasure. I know it's been a real challenge for teachers over the past 18 months. We're very conscious of that and we're here to help. And if we can provide any kind of support or help, please reach out either to myself or through the website tes.com.
Great, thank you very much. And Vipul Vargaba also says thanks. He had to leave earlier, so apologies for that. So thanks again to all of our speakers for this afternoon: Nicholas, Sarah, Lucy, Will, Sarah, and Vipul. So to end, just a few words from myself, I guess. So many thanks to all of our viewers who have joined us this afternoon. Thank you for your time. I hope you learned a lot, as I have surely done so. Thank you to the Philippine Department of Education. And thank you as well to the DepEd Information and Communications Technology Service EdTech Unit. Again, quite long and lengthy, but worth to say because it's because of you that we've had this event materialize. So thank you again very much for your collaboration. COVID-19 certainly brought a lot of challenges in our lives, especially in education. But as we all know, as youth teachers, again, one of our modern day heroes. So thank you for always still supporting education despite the challenges. And we all know that learning can't stop despite that. And it's good to see that there is a silver lining behind all of this. There are innovations, new things being done, accelerated solutions that we have with EdTech that can facilitate learning in all levels, again, for K-12. And we hope that this afternoon provided you some insight into what could be done and what we could do together. And as mentioned, please feel free to reach out to us, the Department for International Trade or the British Embassy Manila, or to any of the companies who have shared their expertise this afternoon. And we look forward to hearing more from you and of course to working with you. So maraming salamat po. Magandang hapon. Ingat po sila and stay safe.